Hey y'all, hope you're doing good. So, I am going to share some thoughts with you with regards to some word study and also just where my mind has been lately. So, I hope you enjoy the message and I hope you're doing good. So, I started out today earlier sitting down and just kind of opening my books that I have here, some of my favorite books. I have my English Latin dictionary and my Bible study book and all this. And anytime I just randomly open these books, I will land somewhere that will lead me down this very interesting path, or what you might call a treasure hunt, what turns into a treasure hunt. And what happened with me earlier today is I had the intention of making a video for you all. As I've shared before, I'm still, for whatever reason, in a season of the numinous being on the quiet side for me. Everything is just kind of, I've entered sort of a restful state. Let's put it that way. And I don't feel funny or bad about it because it feels right to me for whatever reason. I'm not sure yet if this is another transition or if it's just another layer or level of my growth and healing and all this stuff. I'm still figuring that part out. But I'm not having this constant influx of inspiration anymore. It's just not there. And like I said, I also don't see it as a creative block either. I don't perceive it as anything negative. I just perceive it as what's meant to be. And so what I can do, I have found, is if I have the desire to open up my books and see if there's a message there, there usually is. And oftentimes I will start receiving a message in my searching, but it will wind up being just for me. And so that's what happened earlier today. And so I walked away from taking my notes earlier thinking, but I don't have anything for a video and I really want to check in with you guys. So I sat down again and I have another message that I'd like to share with you all. So what came to my mind earlier was how in the Bible it talks about graven images. This is important to me because I have a background in art. And I know that the context of this message in the Bible is that we are not supposed to worship idols or idolize any kind of material thing, because it's taking away from our relationship with God. God is supposed to come first, right? But you know me, I like to question things. So in looking up the word graven, this is in the Vine's Concise Dictionary of the Bible, okay? So the word graven is from, I believe this is a Greek word, charagma, and the Strong's reference number is 5480, and it says from charasso, to engrave, and then it says akin to character, an impress, a mark or stamp, a thing graven. So I want to put a little bit of a spin on this just to broaden our perception, right? Just to sort of expand our awareness and hopefully be able to find a new avenue, a new little path to take on the same journey, going in the same direction, with our growth, but maybe just turning down a new street, right, when you're driving, hypothetically. Okay, so I liked how this is related to character, akin to character, an impress. So what I did is I went to my Latin English dictionary and I looked up the English word character, and it took me to the Latin word more, M-O-R, and it can either end in A or A-E, and it says delay, pause, spell, period of time, stop off. And then also, it's related to being a hindrance, okay? So one example is, in mora or in more habere is to allow, to be a hindrance. And so over on the next page, it has more or mori, M-O-R-E, and it's an adverb meaning foolishly. Foolishly. So if we kind of tie all this together, I thought this is really, at least for me, starting to present a good message. And that is, if we get too caught up in who we believe ourselves to be, okay? I'm not talking about people who are out here pretending to be someone they're not, and acting and living a lie and essentially a wolf in sheep's clothing. I'm not talking about that, okay? I'm talking about all of us in general, humanity, okay? And specifically how, in psychology, it's referred to as the persona. And if we think about it, I've often wondered this. I wonder if you've ever thought about this. So there's so many traps here, spiritual traps, okay, or soul traps, spiritual snares, where we can get caught up placing so much importance in labels and names. And like, for example, a very common one is, our job title. If we have especially invested a lot, if we've worked really hard and we've gotten some kind of important piece of paper, from a college saying that we are certified and, official in a particular area of study, then we can sort of fall into the trap of becoming this persona, okay, this character. And so what I feel like happens, that's just one example of many, 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 many. And I'll kind of expand here in a minute. But essentially, I feel like these ideas, okay, these principles that we have normalized in modern society, what they do is they make an impress. They make an impression, essentially, okay? An influential impression upon our mind and heart. And we wind up becoming it is like a spell, like I just read. We wind up becoming this title, and that's all of who we are. And then later down the road, a lot of times people wind up sort of waking up and realizing, this is often referred to as the midlife crisis. It's like, well, who am I? I've lived all these years, and maybe I've been very successful and made a lot of money in life, or, whatever it is. But there's typically a point in our journey where we sort of reach a crossroads, and the word reckoning is coming to mind, and I don't even know if that's applicable here, but I'll just say it because it's coming to mind. But there comes a point where I think a lot of us sort of say, hang on a second, I have fallen into the trap of identifying so strongly with this character who I thought I really was, that it essentially created, if you want to speak through the spiritual side, use that lens, you might say it created distance between me and the Creator, okay? Because I wasn't consciously idolizing this position, or this, whatever it is, this role, this persona that I had become, but my actions were proving that I was, in fact, idolizing, living a particular way. Because this character and all the things associated with it made an impression on my mind and heart, and it put me under a spell. And so again, another word related to this is mark. Okay? And there's a lot about that in the Bible. I'll just leave that there, and you can just research further. But, if you want to expand on this, it doesn't have to be a job, a label, a title. It can be anything that we think is who we are in terms of just our persona. I've often I've always been a deep thinker, but I've always kind of wondered if you stripped away a person, take any random person, okay? Maybe you kind of observe, not in a judgmental way, but maybe you can just kind of observe, and on the surface, without really knowing a person, you can observe that this person seems to really, really, really like jewelry, for example, okay? For some people, if that's stripped away, they're still going to be the same person, okay? Because they never identified with all the material aspects of that character. But then for others, if a particular aspect of another person, whatever it is, your example is stripped away. I don't know if you guys can hear that thunder, but that was a pretty big boom there. But I think some people, if certain things are stripped away, it becomes obvious that it's kind of like they feel stripped. It's like, who are they? They go into sort of an existential crisis and having to find themselves all over again. And sadly, I think a lot of people during this time fall right back into the trap again in a different area, and that's why I think this is all very much related to putting off the old man, like the Bible speaks about. And essentially, it says, it's not I that live, but Christ in me. And so all of this makes sense, because if we can reach that point where we have committed ourselves, this is through the Christian lens, but hopefully this discussion is fruitful for anybody, regardless of your beliefs, okay? But there's a particular decision we can make where we don't, in fact, identify with all of these things that are like, what's it called? Building your house on sand, I think it talks about in the Bible. It's like all these things can be taken away, whether it's material things that we have, or even titles and job positions, and even your position in a family or in a friend group or a social status or anything it is whatsoever, being well esteemed in society. All of this can be stripped away. And so a lot of times, if you're looking through the psychological lens, it's called, being identified with all of these particular things. But we want to get to a place where if we're not identified with these things, we're also not going to try to live like there is no ego there whatsoever, and we wind up being, head in the clouds to such a degree that it's like we're just floating up here, and we're spacey, and we have no anchor, and we don't really know who we are. And because if you're kind of in that in-between state, I think you can be very vulnerable. And so we want to be anchored to something that is true and ideally unshakable. And that's where a lot of people wind up either coming to God for the first time, committing their life to God for the first time, or realizing how true the Bible really is and recommitting, committing more so. And so I just found that really interesting. But for me, in this season, it's like I am in this restful season, but also in a very peaceful season. And that doesn't mean I'm not busy, by the way. I'm still very, very busy. I think anytime you have, a child and pets and things like that, most of us are just very busy. But you can still find peace and and rest within all of that busyness too. But what can make it really fun in the spiritual sense is to be open to these treasure hunts, what I call treasure hunts. And if God is quiet in your life, as He has been in mine lately, I was thinking earlier too about the verse that talks about how God orders our steps. And if you think of that God is the one that orders our steps, okay, I think that the first step, like I just talked about earlier in the video, is making sure there are no distractions, which are, it can be even any kind of habits that we have, such as getting caught up in all of these negative news stories. And you can even be shamed for not, being really emotionally attached and dedicated with your mind and heart to these negative stories every day, because then it's like people can say, well, you don't care. Well, it's not that you don't care. It's that you understand that you can't do everything literally and save the world. You can do your part, and we all have a part that we can pitch in, and God gives each one of us different gifts and all this, right? But whether it's news, and I think it's great to find humor in the news, or whether it's, getting caught up and identified with your job or with the things that you own or with a particular social group or whatever it is, all this kind of stuff out here in the world. This is what it means to be in the world and of the world. But if we can become in the world and not of it, then we can detach, and then we're not affected. All of these things are not impressing upon our mind and heart, these spells, okay? And so our character is no longer rooted over here in the worldly things. So that's the number one step, in my opinion, okay? And then once you get over here, and there's a little bit of space here, and you can still care. You can still, but it's about not idolizing these things. So once you get over here to this, there's a little space. It truly is what a lot of people describe as your place of peace, which I always loved how Dr. Carter, on his YouTube videos, he would, I don't know how many years he did this, but I know he did it a lot. He would end a lot of his videos with the word peace, and also emphasizing your place of peace. But spiritually speaking, this is how this is solidified in my life. Okay, I'm thinking about like going from this abstract idea into a solid state, or a for sure steadfast, real and true place. This is where you can truly anchor yourself, okay, spiritually, because God's not going away. God's not going to be shifting and changing. He is the same yesterday, today, and He'll be the same tomorrow. And this is just this space here. And once you get in this space, you're not distracted, anymore by all this stuff. And what happens is, when you're not distracted, you start noticing so much that you had not noticed before. And this is where you hear a lot of people talk about, at this stage, they're normally not using the word coincidence. They're typically using the word synchronicity. There's going to be a lot of what we perceive as synchronicities. And it's new. It's new to us because, again, we've just woken up. And this is where in the Bible it talks about having the eyes to see and all this. And, you may try speaking to people that are still over here, and it's not about you're better and they're not, or it's just a different season in one's life, okay? Because you may have been over here for a big part of your life, and then maybe you've moved over here. But if you try speaking to someone who hasn't fully detached from identifying with all these particular things in life, in the worldly way of living, then they may, because they can't relate to what you're saying on your synchronicities, they may, really dismiss a lot of what you're saying and make you question yourself and all this. So it's kind of like you're a spiritual baby. It talks about that in the Bible, that once you are reborn, you're born again, it's like you're a child all over again. And so, children are often dependent on their parents. Not often, but they are dependent on their parents for guidance. And we need to be careful that we are going to God for that guidance, and His Word, as opposed to people who are not really qualified. They're not on the same path as you. So you have to be careful about that, because it can trip you up for some time. It can make you question yourself and even doubt your journey, and possibly even doubt God and all that. So that's why we have important verses like, not casting our pearls before the swine, because our discernment is new. If we're just newly reborn, then it's a new gift, discernment, and we're having to figure out how to use it and all this. But at some point, we can start to have fun with our time with God. And the fellowship is incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And so that's kind of where I am right now, and I'm really enjoying my journey a lot. And I am just taking a lot of comfort in this new season of rest and peace. And I hope that for you as well. So I wanted to keep this one a little bit shorter. I have a lot that I'd like to share with you, but the problem for me is trying to figure out how to organize it. And so I got a lot of different interests. Historically, I've always loved to read. I have collected many, many books over the years. I have always loved art and anything creative whatsoever. I don't limit myself with a particular type of art whatsoever. I like to make it. I like to see what others make as well and support them and appreciate just creativity altogether and imagination. I'm all about that. I mean, I can look at a tree or whatever it is, a floor tile, and I can see, a face in it. I can see pictures and things, and it makes me excited, because a lot of times I'm going to be snapping pictures and people are going to be like, who's that crazy woman over there just taking a picture of the bark on that tree or whatever. It's me, because I see something in it that I want to save for inspiration to paint later, So see, you can be free and open to enjoy these new and exciting things, because again, you're not distracted anymore. So, but I have a lot of, well, as we all do as we get older, I have a lot of experiences, and I've thought about sharing, some of those, not in detail, obviously, for privacy reasons, but just a generalized overview and the lessons I've learned. I was listening to somebody else recently who was doing that, and I thought that was really helpful. But the essence of this message today is, in the Bible it talks about becoming like a child again. And a child is full of wonder. A child's mind is not laden with, I want to look this up again before I close this book. I've already closed it, but I can reopen it. It's not laden with all of these things that we have emphasized in our own mind that really is not serving us or anyone else, to do that. And so that's freedom there, okay? And I'm reminded of how Jesus says, my yoke is light, see? And so, but it requires a commitment and an intentional focus that we make the choice, daily, sometimes moment to moment, to not turn back. I'm thinking about, who was that turned into a pillar of salt? Lot's wife, right? We make the choice not to turn back. Okay? But, where is it? Yeah. The other definition for more, which is the Latin word for character, is foolishly. But there was another word, I'll have to drop it in the description. I've done a lot of research today. There was another word in my research that meant heavy and burdensome. And that's related too. But when you become as a child again, children are full of wonder. And they're full of wonder because they have the capacity to wonder, because their mind and heart has not gone through all this worldly stuff and gotten caught up in all these snares. They're still free. They're still free to wonder. They still have this openness in their mind and heart, which is why we have to protect them, right? But what is their existence like from their perception in that childlike state? It's magical. It's magical. It's full of wonder. And, I was a elementary school art teacher for several years. And the imagination, from these children was just amazing. And I loved it. And I got to be a part of that, which I loved too. Which is probably why I cannot stick with one particular kind of art. I just can't do it. It bores me to death. I can very, very, very much like acrylic painting, but I can't do it day in and day out. I've got to move on to watercolor. I've got to move on to encaustics and paint with wax. I've got to move on to just literally sketching and adding in some water to some water-soluble graphite pencils and water-soluble watercolor pencils. And I like to play with not only just your standard art supplies like clay and everything, but just everything and anything. You can make art with things in your yard, And so I want to leave you with a challenge and hopefully some encouragement and inspiration. And that is, what can you do or try that is new, that you feel like the child inside of you would have interest in? What would bring you a sense of wonder? Because if we just make this conscious decision, to just head down this particular path, if we make the decision to get up and unstuck, okay, so we stand up and we start walking down this path. It's all we have to do. We have to show, I think, God. Remember, faith is with action. It says faith without works is dead. So that's our part, is faith. And so if we focus on that and put action to it, and we stand up and we start walking, then God will order our steps. And that's what happens with sitting down to get a message with you all. For a long time, I felt like it was God inspiring me, and maybe it was. But now, I can very easily just stay discouraged because this flood is not happening. Maybe this is just another level. Maybe God knew that I was new in this for a while, and He didn't even make me have to stand up and start walking. But maybe this next stage that we find ourselves in is where maybe we're not a baby anymore in this new stage. Maybe He wants to see a little bit of initiative from us. Maybe He wants to see us get up and start walking first. Start looking and reading and doing the work first. Because every time I do it, He does order my steps. He connects the dots, the puzzle pieces. And that's why I call it a treasure hunt. So whatever it is, whatever you feel called to do, whether it's sharing, a message on YouTube or any platform, or whether it's creating something, whatever it is, try that. Just getting unstuck, getting up, and walking. and see if He doesn't order your steps, and see if it doesn't result in childlike wonder and certainly satisfaction and joy. So I hope you enjoy this message. I thank you so much for coming along to hear the message, and I hope that you have a beautiful day, and I will see you again very soon.